January 9th, 2026, 9:40 a.m. Hawaiian time. As the sun rose over the Big Island, casting a warm glow across the lush volcanic landscape, the USGS monitoring stations scattered across Kilauea's summit began to register a series of readings that would soon send shockwaves through the scientific community. Deep within the heart of the volcano, where molten rock churns and pulses beneath a thin veneer of solid earth, something extraordinary was happening. Both of Kilauea's summit vents, separated by a vast expanse of hundreds of meters of solid rock, were exhibiting identical thermal signatures, and they were doing so within mere seconds of each other. At first glance, the data streaming in from the state-of-the-art sensors seemed almost impossible to believe. Gas emissions from the two distinct vents were rising and falling in perfect synchronicity, their levels matching each other molecule for molecule. Seismic tremor patterns, the subterranean vibrations that offer a glimpse into the magma's movements deep below ground, were mirroring each other with an uncanny precision. Perhaps most strikingly, the temperature readings from both vents were spiking and dropping in a choreographed dance of thermal energy, with each fluctuation occurring in perfect unison. It was as if some unseen force had flipped a switch deep within the Earth's crust, instantly connecting two independent volcanic systems that had operated autonomously for centuries and transforming them into a single, coordinated entity. The implications of this sudden shift were both fascinating and deeply unsettling. But it was the data from the network of subterranean magnetometers that truly sent a chill down the spines of the volcanologists monitoring the Situation Room at the Hawaiian Volcano Observatory. These highly sensitive instruments, designed to detect even the most minute fluctuations in the Earth's magnetic field, were picking up a pattern of oscillations that had never been witnessed before in the context of volcanic activity. Beneath both of Kilauea's summit vents, the invisible lines of magnetic force were pulsing and undulating in perfect harmony, a mesmerizing dance that could only be explained by the movement of massive volumes of molten rock through a network of interconnected chambers deep underground. The realization began to dawn on the scientists as they pored over the incoming data streams. If Kilauea's two summit vents were no longer operating as independent systems, and were instead functioning as a single integrated entity, then the potential consequences were almost too catastrophic to contemplate. What kind of eruption could they be witnessing in the hours or days to come? And perhaps more urgently, why were the island's long-standing evacuation protocols, which had remained unchanged since the devastating eruption of 2018, suddenly being quietly updated and revised by the authorities? Kilauea, the youngest and most active of Hawaii's volcanoes, is certainly no stranger to spectacular displays of raw geologic power. For over 1,500 years, the oral traditions passed down through generations of native Hawaiians have spoken of the mountain's cycles of destruction and creation, with each eruption reshaping the land and the lives of those who call it home. In the 2 centuries since written records began to document Kilauea's activity in detail, a clear pattern has emerged. Typically, the volcano's eruptions have originated from one of 2 primary sources: the sprawling Halema'uma'u crater, which spans the summit like a gaping wound in the Earth's surface, or the chain of volcanic vents that punctuate the East Rift Zone as it snakes its way toward the sea. When multiple vents have become active in the past, they have always followed a predictable sequence. First, the magma chamber beneath the summit begins to drain, like a subterranean bathtub emptying through some unseen plug hole. Then, hours or even days later, as the subterranean pressure equalizes, the magma finds new pathways to the surface, surging forth from outlying vents along the volcano's flanks. Dr. Michael Poland, a volcanologist with the USGS, who has dedicated his career to unraveling the mysteries of Kilauea, puts it in stark terms. In the 2 centuries that we have been keeping detailed records of Kilauea's activity, We have never witnessed the simultaneous activation of the summit vents like this. It is a behaviour that goes against everything we understand about how this volcano functions. The magma supply systems feeding these two vents are completely separate, or at least that is what we have always believed. Under normal conditions, Kilauea's two summit vents, one to the north of Halemaumau crater, the other to the south, exhibit markedly distinct behaviours. Each has its own distinct signature in terms of the composition of the gases it emits, the specific geochemistry of the molten rock it brings to the surface, and the timing and intensity of its eruptions. These differences are driven by the complex subterranean plumbing that feeds each vent, with magma rising through a labyrinthine network of cracks, fissures, and chambers that have been mapped and studied by generations of geologists. The summit itself is a study in contrasts, alternating between periods of remarkable stability and dramatic change. During its quiescent phases, the ground above the magma chamber gradually swells over a period of months, as the molten rock below strains against the weight of the Earth's crust. Then, as the pressure reaches a critical threshold, the summit erupts in a spectacular display of fire and fury, the magma rushing forth from a single vent until the subterranean reservoir is spent. The ground subsides, the eruption ceases, and the cycle begins anew. This pattern, reinforced by countless hours of seismic data meticulously collected and analysed by teams of dedicated researchers, offers a glimpse into the inner workings of one of the world's most iconic volcanoes. The seismic waves that emanate from each tremor and quake paint a vivid picture of magma in motion, tracing its path from the deep, hidden chambers where it lies in restless slumber to the vents and fissures where it finally bursts forth into the light of day. But on that fateful morning of January 9th, 2026, as the first rays of the sun illuminated the plume of steam and ash rising from Kilauea's summit, it became clear that something had fundamentally changed. The seismic data, once a reliable guide to the volcano's inner workings, was telling a story that defied belief. The north and south vents, separated by a distance that should have rendered any direct interaction between them impossible, were pulsing with an identical rhythm, their seismic signatures overlapping in perfect synchrony. As the hours ticked by and the data continued to pour in from the monitoring stations, the full extent of the anomaly became clear. The summit vents were exhibiting a degree of coordination that had never been witnessed before in the recorded history of volcanism. The temperature of the lava within each vent was rising and falling in perfect unison, reaching a scorching 1,200 degrees Celsius, and then subsiding to a dull glow in a matter of seconds. The gas emissions too were moving in lockstep, with sulfur dioxide levels spiking and dropping in a choreographed dance that left the scientists at the Hawaiian Volcano Observatory scratching their heads in bewilderment. Dr. Sarah Kim, a geochemist who has spent years studying the intricate interplay between magma and gas emissions at Kilauea, sums up the perplexity of the scientific community. She says they have run this data through every known model of volcanic behaviour, every simulation and algorithm at their disposal, and the result is always the same. This synchronization, this level of coordination between the summit vents, simply does not exist in our current understanding of volcanology. It is as if the rulebook has been thrown out the window, and we are watching a whole new paradigm of volcanic activity unfolding before our eyes. So what does it mean when two previously independent volcanic vents suddenly start behaving as one? What happens when the delicate balance of forces that has governed Kilauea's activity for centuries is abruptly upended, giving way to a new and unpredictable regime? History offers some chilling precedents. In 79 AD, the Roman cities of Pompeii and Herculaneum were simultaneously buried under a cataclysmic deluge of ash and pyroclastic flows, when Mount Vesuvius unleashed the full fury of its dual summit vents. The eruption of Krakatoa in 1883, one of the most devastating volcanic events in recorded history, involved the synchronized activation of multiple vents, generating an explosion so powerful that it was heard over 3,000 miles away. And in 1902, the coordinated eruption of the twin vents of Mount Pelée on the Caribbean island of Martinique claimed the lives of 30,000 people in a matter of minutes, as a searing avalanche of gas and ash engulfed the city of Saint-Pierre. But even these historic catastrophes pale in comparison to the potential consequences of a synchronized eruption at Kilauea. In 2018, a dramatic collapse of the Volcano's summit crater created a gaping chasm over 500 meters deep, draining the magma chamber below and fundamentally altering the subterranean landscape. Now, cutting-edge seismic imaging techniques have revealed the presence of a vast, interconnected network of magma chambers and pathways crisscrossing the depths of the Earth's crust, extending up to 5 kilometers below the surface. If the vent synchronization is indeed being driven by a sudden merging of these once separate systems, the implications are staggering. Dr. Eric Clemetti, a leading expert on volcanic hazards, puts it bluntly. If these two summit vents are now drawing from the same vast reservoir of magma, then we are not talking about two relatively modest eruptions happening in tandem. We are looking at the possibility of a single massive eruptive event, with the magma finding multiple pathways to the surface simultaneously. It is a worst-case scenario that volcanologists have long feared, but never actually witnessed in the modern era. The danger lies not just in the sheer volume of magma that could be unleashed, but in the complex interplay of forces that occur when magma chambers merge and pressures build beneath the surface. As the two separate systems combine into one, the pressure does not simply double, it multiplies exponentially as the magma from each chamber surges into the other, creating a feedback loop of ever-increasing force. And with Kilauea sitting at a critical juncture in the sprawling network of tectonic faults and fractures that crisscross the Pacific Basin, the consequences of such a sudden, explosive release of energy could ripple far beyond the island of Hawaii itself. Of particular concern is the possibility of a catastrophic flank collapse on the southern slopes of Kilauea. This unstable region, known as the Helena Slump, is a massive block of the volcano's flank that is slowly sliding towards the sea, lubricated by a layer of slippery clay at its base. If the synchronized eruption were to trigger a sudden acceleration of this slow-motion landslide, the results could be devastating. Massive tsunamis could radiate out across the Pacific, threatening coastal communities from California to Japan. The magma chamber beneath the summit could be abruptly depressurized, leading to an explosive eruption that could dwarf anything witnessed in modern times. Then there are the even more far-reaching consequences to consider. Kilauea's eruptions have long been known to affect global climate patterns, as the vast quantities of sulfur dioxide and other aerosols ejected into the atmosphere scatter incoming sunlight and cool the planet's surface. But a synchronized eruption of this magnitude could send atmospheric levels of these particles soaring to heights not seen since the cataclysmic eruption of Mount Tambora in 1815, which plunged the world into a year of bitter cold and crop failures, remembered today as the year without a summer. For the volcanologists and emergency managers tasked with monitoring Kilauea's every move, the challenges ahead are daunting. The USGS has already raised the volcano's alert level to its highest possible designation, warning of an imminent eruption that could threaten communities across the Big Island. Evacuation orders have been issued for the areas immediately surrounding the summit and along the East Rift Zone, as teams of scientists work around the clock to decipher the clues hidden within the volcano's seismic and geochemical data. But even as they race to unravel the mysteries of this unprecedented volcanic crisis, the scientists at the Hawaiian Volcano Observatory say they are entering uncharted territory. They report that they are seeing things happening inside Kilauea that they have never witnessed before. Tina Neal, the scientist in charge at the observatory, said, "Our existing models and monitoring tools simply are not equipped to handle this kind of synchronized activity between multiple vents. We are having to adapt and improvise on the fly, using every scrap of data and every ounce of expertise at our disposal to try to stay one step ahead of the volcano." But even as they work tirelessly to protect the communities in the path of the impending eruption, the volcanologists studying Kilauea are grappling with an even more profound question. What does this sudden shift in the volcano's behaviour portend for the future? If the synchronized eruption of Kilauea's summit vents represents the emergence of a new paradigm in volcanic activity, then the implications could be staggering. Could other volcanoes in the Pacific Basin and beyond be poised to undergo similar transformations, their long dormant magma chambers suddenly merging and erupting in catastrophic unison? And in a world already grappling with the existential threat of climate change, what would be the consequences of a sudden uptick in global volcanic activity, with millions of tons of ash and aerosols flooding into the atmosphere and blotting out the sun? As night falls over the island of Hawaii and the glow of the lava within Kilauea's summit vents pulses and flickers in mesmerizing synchrony, these are the questions that haunt the minds of the scientists and emergency responders keeping vigil over the restless mountain. The story of this unprecedented volcanic crisis is still unfolding, the full scope of its impact and implications yet to be revealed. But one thing is certain: the world is watching with bated breath as Kilauea rewrites the rulebook of volcanology before our very eyes. Stay ahead of the latest developments in this unfolding crisis with Earth Attacks, your source for cutting-edge insights into the natural disasters reshaping our planet. Subscribe now for exclusive updates on the Kilauea eruption and other geological events around the globe, and join a community of concerned citizens and scientific experts working to better understand and prepare for the challenges that lie ahead.